We've been talking about what makes a great congregational lyric, and we've touched on a couple of things already. We've asked the question, where's the authority? We've talked about keeping it fresh and just making sure that we're writing fresh expressions of timeless truth. We've asked the question, does it resonate with our congregation and what it means to write out of relationship with God and with others? And we talked also about what it means to be a theologian as a lyric writer and just the importance of representing God accurately, because when we write songs, songs teach doctrine and they teach others what they ought to think about God. We want to finish up with two more quick things. Here's the first one. More than one approach works when it comes to lyric writing. One of the clear characteristics of great lyrics has always been rhyme. Rhyming has always solidified a strong lyric. However, patterns for rhyming can include both perfect rhymes, which I would never encourage anybody to use this rhyme in a congregational song, but a perfect rhyme, love and dove, that's a perfect rhyme, which are often the strongest, but they're also the most tried as well, meaning that they've been used, they've been overdone, we try to stay away from them. But there's also imperfect and like-sounding rhymes. Words like need and release, they both have that E sound in them. My encouragement to songwriters is to become a wordsmith. Get obsessed with words, understand what they mean. Be aware of this, and I've noticed this happening in a lot of modern worship music. Be aware of what the first definition of a word is, and when you can, stick to its common definition. What I've seen happen recently, the third or fourth definition under its primary definition is that it's unrelenting. And that is true about God's love. It really is unrelenting. And keep in mind that that also underlines the theological concept when you say that God's love is unrelenting, depending on your theological persuasion. So just be aware that you are teaching theology. But the primary definition of the word furious is anger. And, when I first heard that song, God's love is furious, I thought, ooh, that's kind of bizarre. Be aware of what the primary definition of the words you are using, and I would be aware of maybe not using words that, unless they're commonly used in our vernacular, because language is always changing, unless they're commonly being used and understood as their third and fourth definition, I would stick away from using a word just because it can mean something. Have a good grasp on the English language and use words for what they mean primarily. And usually that means the first definition of the word. Just be aware of that, because what you can happen is you can just stretch the meaning of a word and really kind of confuse people. And my ears just went up when I heard that God's love is furious, because I'm thinking, I don't think God's love is angry. But become a wordsmith. Know the power behind the meaning of a word, its vowel sounds, and how it can potentially rhyme. It might have a perfect rhyme associated with it, or it might have a vowel sound that's an E or an A or a U sound, and that sound can be rhymed imperfectly with a like-sounding word with that sound in it as well. Like we talked about, need and release. They're not perfect rhymes, but they both have that E sound, and therefore they can be used as a perfect rhyme. I use that whole concept in my song Defender. In the pre-chorus it says, "There is help for the hopeless, for the wounded in need. In the presence of Jesus there is power unleashed." That unleashed and need, they're not perfect rhymes, but together they work as an imperfect rhyme, and they help solidify the lyric and kind of put a period at the end of the sentence. And when the mind hears that, the mind's always wanting order and structure. So when you're able to write a lyric that is characteristic of order, and one of the ways that we bring order is through rhyming, being it imperfect or perfect, when the mind hears order, they gravitate towards it. It's easier to remember. And that's what we want to do. We want to implant the truth of God into people so that they can remember the true things of God's Word. So let's use all the things that we have in the English vernacular and in our grammar to make sure that we're accurately expressing truth about God, because the end result that we want is to actually plant truth inside people's hearts so that they can be changed. That's the reason why we're writing. That's the reason why we want our songs to be used. So I always encourage students to listen to some famous American songwriters who have mastered and defined this skill. I always say that students ought to have compilations of people like Paul Simon. My favorite record by Paul Simon is Graceland. It was an album that came out, I think, in 1986 that had a lot of African musicians on it. I love the sounds on it, but Paul Simon, most importantly, is an incredible lyricist and is just able to convey an idea using all these elements that we've been talking about. Another person that is just hands down one of the greatest lyricists of the 20th and 21st century is Bob Dylan. You just cannot study lyric without getting away from Bob Dylan, so I encourage songwriters to listen to those guys as well. In addition to rhyming, learn the power of repetition, okay? Great songs are about repetition, not not only in the lyric but also in the form. That's why, and some people criticize the modern worship movement and say, well, I'm sick of these 7-11 songs, that say the same thing over and over again. And what they're really saying is that they prefer the old hymns. Well, truth be told, the old hymns are doing repetition just a different way. If you sing a song with stanzas, you're repeating the same melody over and over again. I think what people are trying to say at that time is that they don't like repeating lyrics, the same lyrics, the short lyrics over and over again, and to each his own. Sometimes repeating lyrics, even simple lyrics, is the easiest way to get truth into somebody's heart. And sometimes there's a place for deeper theological expounded songs that are really statements about who God is. Great songs can accomplish great things, and to each his own. There's a spot for each of that in our worship repertoire. Also know the power of alliteration. Alliteration is when we have two words, often one after the other, that start with the same letter or have a similar sound. Awesome alliteration would be a lousy example, but they both start with the word A. Jesus, your profound presence, that P sound with one word coming after the other. You learn the power of alliteration. It can be a really powerful thing if you can master that skill. And as you listen to worship music, you'll notice that great songs use great alliteration in their lyrics. Also understand, the whole element of contrast. We've talked about In Christ Alone by Keith Getty and Stuart Townend. What heights of love and depths of peace. Okay, heights and depths, the whole idea of contrast. And so much in Hebrew poetry, we see in the Psalms that there's so much contrast. Also understand the whole idea of synonymous parallelism. Synonymous parallelism is when you basically say the same thing twice, but you expand on it. We look at a psalm like Psalm 19. I'm going to turn there really quickly. And it basically says the same thing again. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. It's saying the same thing. It's saying that creation is speaking of God. And sometimes that's an effective way to get an idea across when we're writing lyrics. When I was writing the verse to my song Defender, he is near to the broken. Second line, he is close to the weary of heart. Well, someone who's broken and weary of heart, that's synonymous. That's describing the state of a person that is the same. That's describing the state of someone who's lowly, who's sad. Saying that they're broken and saying that they're weary of heart is a synonymous way of describing the same person. But what it does is it helps us latch, because it's a sneaky repetition way, because it's saying the same thing twice, just a different way, and it helps us latch onto concepts. And synonymous parallelism can be a really great way of getting across a big idea. And that leads me to say, great lyrics are about big ideas. I always tell my songwriting students, think of your lyrics as a bullseye. And if your bullseye, in my song Defender, the bullseye is about God being close and God being our defender. Every single lyric in every section of the song, the verse, the pre-chorus, the chorus, ought to point back to it, So in my verse, he's near to the broken, close to the weary of heart. In the pre-chorus, there's hope for the helpless, for the wounded in need. In the presence of Jesus, there's the chorus, which is a response to that, call upon the name of the Lord, he's our defender. All of those concepts can be related very clearly back to the fact that God is in our defense and God is with us. The bridge, God is our refuge, our strength and salvation. A mighty fortress is the Lord Almighty. Again, talking about the characteristics of God that stand in our defense, that he is a fortress, that we can rest and hide in his shelter. It's all about one thing. And that's what great lyrics are about. You take a look at a song like How Great Is Our God. Talks about all the aspects of God that are related to his greatness. Well, why is God great? Well, he wraps himself in light. Darkness has to hide in his presence, it talks about in the verse. And, the chorus is a response, how great is our God? Well, what else makes God great? Well, the bridge answers the question. He's the name above all names. He's worthy of all praise. And our response is going to be to sing his greatness. The whole song is about the greatness of God. Nobody listens to that song and thinks, oh, this song is about God's faithfulness. There's a bullseye on it, and great lyrics do that. They are all about one main idea. So I really encourage you, as you analyze and as you scrutinize your lyrics and rewrite your lyrics, because great songwriters do that, they scrutinize and rewrite, make sure that your songs are about one thing. Make sure that you're really hitting the bullseye, and if you're not, continue to craft your lyric until they all can relate to one idea. Here's the last thing. Not all words sing the way that they sound. What looks good on paper may not sing as well. Great songs for the masses use words that not only have significant meaning, but that roll off the tongue effortlessly. Okay? You might come across, a theological word that you want to build into a song. Maybe the word propitiation. We read that in Romans chapter 1, I believe. It talks about Jesus Christ becoming a propitiation for our sin. Well, propitiation it may look good and it may rhyme. Concentration, propitiation, kind of has that, kind of fake rhyme thing happening. But to actually sing that in a live setting, it may look great on paper and it may make sense in that it rhymes with another word, but it may not sing well. So make sure that the words that you use come off the tongue and practice singing them. Often I'll sit at my piano and I'll have a lyric and I'm crafting a lyric and I'll just say it out loud. I'll speak it out loud and I'll sing it to a melody and I'll just make sure that it sings well. Don't make your congregation perform tongue twisters on Sunday. That's the main thing. If you want your song to be sung, make sure that people can latch on and they can actually say the words and that they're sung well and that it's natural to sing them. The song will become more of a distraction if it feels like a tongue twister. Sing out the words that you want to use and see if they sound as good as they look. So again, we've talked about a number of things in this whole section on crafting a congregational lyric. We've asked where's the authority. We've talked about keeping things fresh and writing out of a relationship. Does it resonate? Does the lyric resonate with your congregation? We talked about being a theologian. We talked about more than one approach works and talking about rhyming schemes. And we've talked about putting a bullseye on our lyrics and making sure that our lyrics are all about one thing. That's such a great principle, that great songs are about one thing, one concept. And if you analyze the lyrics of some of your favorite songs, you will see that. And then finally, we talked about how not all words sound the way that not all words sing the way that they are sound, and that we need to actually say out our words and sing them out to make sure that they sing as well as they look on paper. So hopefully this has been a help to you, and I just know that as you continue to master the craft of lyric writing for congregational worship songs, that the Lord really will burst some great songs in you as you put some of these points into practice. I pray that this has been a help to you.